We're good? You guys ready?
Hold on.
Hold on.
Okay, now I'm ready.
You ready?
No, I'm not. How'd that happen?
Are you stuck?
You were fine this whole time.
Oh my gosh.
This whole time.
Headphones are
Okay,
hard.
now I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Don't you know if we have an audience out there?
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks for viewing.
Yeah.
Our live audience.
I know,
They
right?
just saw us
Oh,
waving
I was
them.
talking to the camera. My bad.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
For those of you who don't know, we are Squish Pups, and this is our pilot podcast. And we have an interesting topic for you guys today. This is going to be a little bit more on the professional side and academic. We are all of different majors, and we have a pretty deep question that we have when we start getting into it. Now, how about we introduce ourselves and our majors, and then we'll branch off and do our own individual segments.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Sean, and I'm an architecture major.
Hi,
Hey.
Sean.
Hey, everyone. My name's Sam, and I am a communications major.
I'm Shelby. I'm an interior design major.
And I'm Kyle, and I'm an industrial design major. Do you want to try that again? It doesn't matter.
I'm Shelby. I'm an interior design major.
We're new to this. So we're going to take this from all of our points of views from our different professions. And the question is, what is the underlying value we are communicating to people? How are other cultural experiences created and fostered for tourists inside and outside?
Okay, well, I think that's a very complex question to sort of answer. But from my perspective in architecture, there's a lot of information that I found online, and this is just some of my resources. The IAAC, which is the Institute of Advanced Architecture in Catalonia, Barcelona, recently wrote an article in regards to architecture and tourism. And one of the interesting things is that it's had a really long history. And originally, architecture such as temples were built to honor things like gods, and grand theaters and stadiums were used as public spaces in order to conduct some sort of a business or event. And today, these large pieces of architecture are almost like branding a location, branding a city. And it was a marker of those societies in growth and those societies as great or unique from others. An example would be the Pyramid of Giza. Those large pieces of architectural marvels are iconic, and anyone in the world who saw them understands where they are and what they represent. And it is a representation of that culture in that time, which I think is also really important. And that's exactly what architecture does today for tourism. Today, city planners are using architecture to brand their city, to make them stand apart. And that's what attracts tourism to their cities, so that it can boost their economies. And that's a really large industry right now, is tourism. A great example would be like Qatar. Qatar is one of those countries who are huge with natural gas resources, and that's how they make most of their income. But that's a resource that will run out, and it is beginning to already run out. And so what they're doing is they're using that funding, that money, to reinvent their cities and make them a tourist destination. In 2022, they're preparing for the FIFA Cup. So they're building a huge stadium, and it's absolutely stunning. But it's interesting to see when you're there that most of these buildings right now are empty. And that's because they're preparing for 2022. They're not there yet, but that's the plan. And you can see it if you're there in the making. And that's really interesting, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. To go off of that, like, how are these people seeing this? Like, how do they know about this? And it's all about social media, and everything is on social media nowadays, as I'm sure we all know.
Yeah.
The second you put something out there, it'll be out there forever. And so
Oops.
there's resorts in other countries, and there are, even these countries itself have PR firms that work for them, and they hire different influencers and creators to create content for them to promote those places, to make them look good in a sense. There's bloggers. There are so many blogs out there that are travel blogs. I know a few, like there's travel families and there's little kids and their parents and they get to travel around the world. Like as a little kid, I mean, it seems pretty cool to me that like you could do that. These places are hiring these people because they know that they can create something that is going to reach an audience of millions, maybe even billions of people. They also make a heck of a lot of money doing it, and which is really awesome because like you can make a lot of money and also you get to go to these destinations for free. So if anyone out there wants to be a blogger or a YouTuber, I highly suggest it. If you can get the attention of these PR firms, I suggest it. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, especially with social media and however you said everything is shared, a lot of these places are being designed with that in mind, creating experiences for people to share on their social media. So a lot of the interiors or even exteriors of these buildings are being designed with elements that are meant to be shared, such as literally a social media moment, an Instagram moment. And a lot of that is incorporated into experiential design, creating an experience that will bring out emotions in people and emotions that they can share with others. So a study was done by Jamie Kim and Daniel R. Fresenmeyer, and they actually studied the emotions of a couple of tourists. It was in the Philadelphia area, and they looked at, in real time, they looked at these emotions that these two people were experiencing and how different senses, different sights, smells, all of their senses were activated depending on the activity they were doing. So different emotions and different senses were being activated with these different experiences.
I actually want to go off that real quick, and I found actually some research about how the pros and cons of all of this factor into all of these posts and like the blog posts, the YouTube videos, all of that. And the people, they give their honest opinion, which is good because it gives this audience a idea of if they want to go to this place or not, or if they want to maybe in the future go there, like, or now. These places want to make their places appeal to their people, and like it's good in a way so they can see the pros and cons of what these people are finding. So then they'll be able to fix those things, because sometimes there are customers who don't make a video or who aren't very public. They don't always say what they didn't like.
Yeah.
So they're able to fix everything from that.
Right. Yeah, and a way that hotels are specifically trying to implement this, aside just from going around the city and having these experiences, specific hotels like boutique hotels, or there's a new kind of thing called lifestyle hotels that are really becoming popular. That's like almost a chain boutique hotel that, it has its own branding and it caters to things like wellness and cultural authenticity. That's a very big thing. An example would be the Spring and Spa, Volando Arai Spring and Spa in Taipei, Taiwan. They have a variety of cultural experiences, art, performances that really bring people into their cultures, and it's a very authentic and invigorating experience.
Actually, you kind of set that up for me. The authenticity actually is a great way to tailor this into for industrial design. Some of my initial research involved a lot in Asia, how they are turning a lot of abandoned and rundown factories and cinemas to hostels. But a lot of the intent discussed, and this was from, this was like a design or travel like forum, and the intent isn't just to turn them into utilized space since it's already like a latent resource. It's actually with the intent of providing travelers with a very beautiful place to stay so they don't feel disconnected from like their whole purpose of being there. There's how many times like I've just within our own country we go to some place very iconic, and you stay in like a chain hotel, and that you do feel very separated. Their intent is to definitely set that up with not only visuals, like they will literally have big windows and whatever. You can look outside your window, and here's this temple. It's like in your backyard. And then there's even so they incorporate inside, like there's a lot of bars and stuff, a lot of socialization, which is really big. The concept of that, which would be really related to industrial design, is the idea of user-centered design. What seems to be taught, or some train of thought that really seems to it funnel down to, which is wrong in a way, is it really brings it down to one specific person, or really a really small demographic. And a user experience blog was talking about how the original concept that is lost and mixed up, and that the world is all about speed now, which I know firsthand from a lot of my experiences in props. Like when I was on a set for the making of that VA lottery commercial, I was talking with the prop master, and he was talking about like there's all this stuff you could have done, but it's all about speed. Like no matter what they want, like paint takes the time to dry. Like that's not going to change. In design, it seems to be suffering the same way, faster. That is something that genuinely bothers me, because I'm one that is sort of a perfectionist. So if I have to extend something, if at a time, it's like, of course I'm going to do it, because like everything matters in that sense, especially when it's all about the experience, especially with something about tourism and culture. Like, you can't half-ass it in a way. And on another design forum, which is interesting, still goes off of the authenticity in a way, where it's the idea of like, okay, design for the user, user-centered design for the user. What are the user's needs? And that creates a complication of what are the needs, because it comes into this interesting sort of paradox where like now we're in a world of technology, that what defines the need? Because it's like, does the technology define the need, or is it the culture? Because it's sort of like, if I give you a spoon, you're probably going to go eat cereal or oatmeal or probably ice cream with it. But if you give that spoon to someone in a third world country, they might use it as a small shovel. So the idea of what it is, what it's meant for, is completely different than how it's used. So it's a different global perspective, which then transitioned into this report I found, which was after a industrial design convention. These were written from a university about the idea of globalization, which is in a way more of an experiment to see how designers can design culturally, like in a context outside of their own, like give them a challenge that is for a different country. There is actually kind of an ongoing debate in some of the other assets that like in the comments, there's definitely like a back and forth between what defines that. It's really interesting that in the design release with industrial design, that there's a lot of back and forth of what's the thing to focus on. And with all the other stuff we've worked on, like it's been a theme that I have found in all the other resources since then. We are going to phone in our friend. His name's Marco. He's currently in Dubai, and he is a international business major, and he's going to give us his input on this context. Okay, cool. We're back. Thanks, Marco.
Thank you so much.
We're talking about, so what is the underlying value we're communicating to people, and what are the cultural experiences being created and fostered in the realm of tourism?
Well, I think culturally speaking, architecture is a marker of that culture, is a marker of that society.
Oh, definitely.
And so the value there is communicating to the customer, this is who we are. This is what represents who we are. This is what our culture is about. This is what it's important to us. This is what we spend our lives doing here in this particular place. And I think that's important, because that's why tourists come there. That's why people travel. They want to experience something new, something different, something that's going to add value to their lives. And it's usually something that they're interested in. And in order for a city or society to make themselves interesting or captivating to a customer, they do amazing things like architectural marvels.
Yeah, I would say interior. What?
Go on. No, sorry.
No, I'm just very short, so I. Yeah, on a historical level, interior design, I think, covers all those things as well. As you know, interior design and architecture go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
As most interiors of historic buildings are constructed by the architect at the same time the building is made. But on a more modern level, a lot of times that may not be the case. The retrofitting or just new construction. So relating it to Kyle's point of user-centered design, I think the interior design of a hotel or an accommodation communicates what the hotel wants you to experience while you're in that particular location, especially if it's a resort. They may be trying to cater all of your experiences, altering all of your emotions, like kind of a getaway, and they're trying to get you away from the stress and the emotions of your everyday life and literally designing a new life for you for that week or two that you're on vacation. Yeah. So
It's funny because, like, I guess it's sort of what I said with like that sort of play of the user and who's the user and what's their need. I mean, I don't know a lot about interior design, but I'm aware that, like, everything has an effect, like, from the experience. How does the user or the person, I think we should actually start calling them as a person now. What are they getting out of that? And part of it is, like, that's the trick. It's like, it's so interesting. I could have sat down and be like, what do I want them to get out of it? And I don't think that's exactly the point. I think it's what do they want to get out of it. And the reason why they're traveling in the first place is to experience that other culture or the experience, or even if it's next door. We could even dumb this down to traveling across the state or something like that. The play of the need with where it's located, it's just so different everywhere it goes. As well as how is the space utilized or the purpose of the structure? Because that's the one thing I wanted to ask you, Sean, was as they're building these structures for the Olympics, right? Yeah. Didn't you say that there are buildings that are vacant right now?
So it's not necessarily Olympics. It's the World Cup, FIFA.
Oh, World Cup. Okay.
So soccer, I think. I don't know anything about the sport.
Soccer.
But they are building these large buildings in preparation, like I said, for this tourist boom. That's where they want their economy to go. That's where they want their growth to go, to be the part of the industry that is tourism.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the past, they relied completely on their natural resource of natural gas, and that has made them a ton of money. But the goal now is to transform the city.
Right.
And so they are throwing these buildings up left and right, whether they need them now or not, in anticipation for that need. So since they have the money now, they're banking on it now. They're making that investment now. As to whether it becomes successful or not, who knows? But they are expecting up to 1.7 million people to arrive
A lot of people.
for the 2022 Cup. So I think they are preparing for that.
That's funny because I'm sure we're all being taught this now, but it's something that keeps like registering in my mind is the idea of, well, more of a systems approach, something that's systemically viable. Pulling this more from a business aspect, because all those buildings are going to be constructed. There's those 700 million people just coming in for that time. And once it's done, that population leaves, and then what could it be used for? Like, I'm curious how it's being designed. I wonder if they'll convert that space into something. Maybe we'll stay hotels for people, but I almost doubt it considering the population. And then I'm curious if it'll turn into something for businesses or somehow if it provides job opportunities. Mm-hmm. I'm curious.
Well, I can't speak for the nation of Qatar,
of course.
but I can assume based off the information that I got on their most popular travel website, tourbusdubai.org, and the information that they're quoting is that the intention is to put themselves on the map of tourism.
Okay.
So this large event is what's going to make them known. Today, most people, when they think about, oh, let's leave the country, let's do something international, they don't think, oh, let's go to Qatar.
Yeah.
I mean, if they do think of the Middle East, they think about Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think about Qatar.
Yeah.
Right.
And so Qatar is taking advantage of that opportunity. The opportunity
Yeah.
that the FIFA Cup is coming out here. We're about to be really well known. We're about to be basically broadcasted internationally in televisions across the world. And we want our name to be out there. We want people to think of us when they think about, oh, I'm going to the Middle East. Instead of going all the way to Dubai, which may be very expensive by then, how about we just go to Qatar? And that's what they're hoping for. I think they're hoping that it will boom their economy enough to the point where that need for office buildings or that need for hotel accommodations will be there. It will exist. And so they won't have to build for it. They will already be prepared.
This
they will have
actually
the resources.
brings back the topic I was discussing about designing for the user. In the act of them constructing this infrastructure, if you will, do you think the end user, do you think it's actually they're considering them as a country or the people coming in? So to iterate, in Qatar constructing all of this, are they really designing it for themselves? Because you talked a lot about them trying to put themselves on the map. Or do you really think this is about how they can share their culture with other people? I mean, at that, it's a little bit of a balance between them and others, but where do you think that intent really lies?
I think it is a balance. I think they are designing for the modern world, but they're not excluding their culture. When they design, when they throw up buildings and resorts, the maybe interior design choices they make are in relation to that culture and is allowing people to experiencing that there. But because they're in the Middle East, because they're in a country like Qatar, it does not mean that they're omitting the modern amenities. Like you were talking about and like Sam was talking about, the experience, especially when it comes to emotion, is really important. And it's that emotional tie that a customer has with a destination that brings them back or continues to bring them back to that destination. It's what continues for them to have a market, for them to have a loyal customer.
I also feel like in a lot of countries, they are very passionate about their culture and they want to include that. I mean, in America, we're not sadly, but we're a melting pot. Like there's so many different cultures, and I'm sure there's people who really embrace their cultures from other countries come here and celebrate those. But in those countries, they all celebrate their culture and like embrace it in such a different way that we do here. And it's just so authentic there, and it's so strong, and they have such a huge passion for it. That draws these people there, at least from my experience. It draws those people there to experience that culture. Like you would never want to take that away, because I feel like people then would be like, it's not as authentic. I feel like I'm just home, or I'm in Florida.
Right,
like
then what's the point?
Exactly. Like I'm just in Orlando, sitting in my hotel. That's
And this brings back what I found in the report, the design convention report, about globalization. But the biggest thing I find really interesting is that idea of globalization, how it's become more of a discussion than an issue, that we're lacking in how to do it right, which it's this weird paradox, because if we are struggling to figure out how can we design for people coming into our country and our culture, how can we do it so they're not leaving with this idea of like, I had it or I experienced here and there, I'm not really sure. But the discussion itself is still eluding the same problem, that they're talking about it, but they don't even know how to solve it. It's because this problem has been around, my research dates back to like 2006. So like it's aware, it's known of, but it's like we keep trying to find one specific solution, like steps A through C, that can be implemented into schools so it can be taught as another subject like sustainability. And I find that interesting because I don't think you can dumb something down like that. And that's, I think, where I'm trying to lead this to, is that how can countries do this so it's this process? And I think it's taking a lot of that authenticity out.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think there's no one size fits all solution, especially with so many different cultures. And on a globalization level, a lot of it, these hotels are about branding. They're creating, especially these lifestyle hotels, these boutique hotels. It's really about the brand and how do we implement design elements or user elements or experiences to keep people coming back to our country, keep people coming back to our accommodations, keep people interested. Obviously, there's things that are inherently interesting about all these countries, especially on a nature-based level. Some countries have mountains, others have rivers, and those things inherently attract people. But how do we as humans design these man-made things? incorporated with these natural based elements that keep people coming back.
I think an interesting tool for that is actually saying what you're talking about, how like companies or whatever reach out to those individuals or families or whatever to do that. I think it's sort of like a backdoor way to sort of get in and get that that truth of like, how does it actually work for people? But at the same time, I still find that those kinds of people have a very biased perspective because it's all about following at that point.
No, yeah, that's actually a lot of people's main concern when watching these videos. They're like, is this really how it is? Like, are they being paid to say this? Like, that is a huge concern of many that I have noticed, like from videos that I've watched and the research I've done, like that people are kind of skeptical. Like, they don't know if they're just saying this because they're getting paid to do it.
I feel it's a very iffy way to get that kind of information, which is interesting. Of how do we find information to do what's right in these kinds of designing?
Well, the interesting communication piece that you were discussing, the sort of online presence, the social media presence, the aspect that people are relying on now today in order to receive data, to receive information. When people look for things, what do they use? Google, YouTube, in order to receive information, because they want that visual mode experience in order to give them the best possible answer that they can understand for whatever issue they're looking up or problem that they're trying to explore. And when it comes to tourism, these companies are really smart at picking the correct person with the large following in order to represent them when they start to give them feedback, or when they begin to basically allow other people give them information of their product or their service. And that's what they're looking for. That's by design. That's their intention. They have a marketing budget. They take some of it and they put it into a social media guru or someone who has a large following, and they understand their personality based off their previous videos or their particular following or their specific brand, and they use that to their advantage. And whatever feedback comes out of that, whatever video they produce is probably really limited by the company, because they want that authentic, organic response. They want that organic feedback. That also helps that company out, because they can see, oh, this is what's wrong. This is where we lack. This is our weaknesses. These are our mistakes. Now we can improve because we have honest feedback. And we don't have to rely on a survey, which people never seem to take for some reason. People pay so much money in order to do surveys and in order to put comment cards all over the place in their businesses, but people do not take the time to fill it out. So how do you get an accurate picture of whether you're conducting business the way that the customers want it or not?
Guys, we are like an hour in.
Oh my God.
This will be real fun.
Have fun writing 202.
No, really, we do hope you guys honestly did find something very insightful out of this. I know there's other majors out there, especially within our class. Other majors within our class specifically. It'd be interesting to hear what other input we can have from those other majors as well.
Yeah, so we can't wait to hear from you guys. And thanks for listening and watching. And we hope
you laughed.
Hope to have you guys listen in on next week's episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is weekly now. All right.
This is better than Joe Rogan.
Oh, come on.
What's next week's topic?
Okay, but still. Also, the other day I thought it was 2019, so can we talk about that?
You are jumping
Oh my
way
God.
too early.
Yeah.
You guys probably only invited me because I bring in the diversity.
Yes. Marco,
Clearly-
we miss you. We really miss you. Let's all
Miss-
look into the camera and
Let's whisper it.
Marco, we
No,
miss
don't. You guys are being weird.
you. Okay, Sean doesn't like that.
So I'm going to bring this back to our question of, so what's the underlying value we as in our individual professions are trying to communicate within the idea of how are cultural experiences created and fostered through tourism or in tourism from our different professional backgrounds.
You want to try that again?
What was that? All right. Let me pull up our question. Don't hurt yourself. So
I do it all for fashion.
It's worth it.
Fashion is pain.
Fashion is pain.
Fashion is pain. Have you
Beauty
seen some of the
is pain,
shoes
too.
they have to wear?
No thanks. I like my feet nice and flat on the ground.
My shoes
not
right now
everyone
could
is
definitely
Kyle.
knock someone out. Like, look at these.
Everyone is.
They can knock someone out.
You almost knocked me out.
Totally, Kyle.
It's in my ear, Shelby. Well, since I
don't-
wasn't
I don't
good
speak
enough for
very
Sean, I'll restate that our question
Take
that
2.
it
Don't do it at the same time.
No more clapping,
Take
please.
2. No. 1, 2.
Two.
Clap. Wait. 1,
2.
2, 3. Clap.
I hit the mic too. All right.
Away, Kyle.